Football players under 23 are racking up a record number of minutes on the pitch at elite level. They're having more influence on matches than ever. But is this actually dangerous for their development? And could injuries lead to their careers being cut short? Hello and welcome to Football Now. Nowadays in elite football, young stars under the age of 23 are dominating the lineups of the world's best teams. Jude Bellingham, Lamine Yamal, Bukayo Saka and Julian Alvarez are just some of the young players who've risen to prominence over the last couple of seasons. Now, of course, in footballing terms, being 23 years old actually isn't that young, but there's a growing concern that playing too many matches could lead to more injuries later in their careers. So, just how much does the male body change in those early key years? And how important is it to manage the game time of young players?
There's lots of changes, physically, hormonally, and even in terms of their playing and training environment during that period. I think, obviously, as the male evolves over those years, his testosterone levels increase. That obviously leads to a big change in his lean muscle mass. The growth spurts can be quite substantial during that period, but also hard to predict. Everyone's kind of on their own individual journey. During adolescence, the end of the bones, the epiphyseal plates, are still open as they're growing, and where the muscle attaches or where the tendon attaches to the bone is also still open, so the profile of injury they get is slightly different in those late teenage years or early teenage years versus into early adulthood, when those areas fuse and the stress goes through more the bone and more the muscular-tendon structure as a result. So they get bigger, they get heavier, they get more mass, and their movement quality doesn't always match those physical developments.
In the last decade, we've seen a dramatic increase in the number of minutes footballers are playing across the board. But compared to 10 years ago, football squads are made up of more young players than ever before. In 2013-14, footballers under 23 playing for the league champions Manchester City, Atletico Madrid, Juventus, Bayern Munich and PSG played a combined total of 29,408 minutes. 10 years later, there has been a 55.8% increase, rising to 52,658.
One of the biggest things is I think the game is getting quicker, the speed of the game is quicker, and the need for any successful team, you have to have speed in your team, you have to have energy, you have to have players that are willing to make forward runs, running behind the back line. So I think a big thing you get with younger players is you get real energy, and also they haven't had a career of getting scars along the way in terms of losses and relegations or losing a cup final. So there's a real bravery with young players, there's a fearlessness, and I think that's something that's really valuable with young players coming through. They've just never experienced any of that, so there's a real fearlessness about their approach.
For prominent players, schedules have become relentless. Real Madrid and England midfielder Jude Bellingham has an enviable trophy cabinet by the age of 21. The amount of games he's played in the last 2 years have been insurmountable. Between August 2022 and 2024, he played 105 games for club and country, racking up a total of 9,026 minutes on the pitch. Again, let's look back a decade to Germany's Mario Götze, a creative midfielder in a similar role to Bellingham. Our research showed that in like-for-like competitions, Götze was actually involved in 5 more games in the same time frame. However, the data showed that he played just 7,052 minutes in 110 games, which suggests that his minutes on the pitch were managed closely by the club. Now 32 years old, Götze is still playing highly competitive football in the Bundesliga. Could Bellingham's significant amount of extra minutes so early on in his career compromise his career longevity?
You can hypothesize both ways. Definitely you can see that if you have a certain amount of mental and physical capacity and you start using it earlier in life, that might have a shelf life and lead to earlier ends in careers. I think a lot of that will depend not on the athlete's physical ability, but the injuries they pick up during that early transition phase, that if they can navigate that window, that we might find if you get to a certain age relatively healthy, it has no impact on your career. If you get to a certain age and you've picked up some big injuries, does that start to curtail things? But definitely, I think if you can get to a certain point in your career, 23, 4, 5, where you've navigated that journey relatively successful, I wouldn't necessarily think that you're going to run into trouble then later in life because you started at 17 or started at 18.
So, whose responsibility is this, and where does the duty of care lie? As players regularly feature for their squads, there comes with that a more physical and mental pressure. And it's down to the managerial teams to manage the footballers' time on and off the pitch. So, how difficult is it to get that balance right between letting a young player develop and also making sure it isn't too much too soon?
It's everything. It's the role, the responsibility of an under-20 coach or a second team coach at both club and national team level. The role is to prepare players to play for the first team. Obviously, your relationship with the fitness coaches and the performance staff are important to help manage players. But look, in the end, you still have to use your own eyes and your own feeling and your relationship with the player to understand when's the best time to give him his debut. You want to set him up to be successful. And then obviously seeing him in training, how he performs, his mentality, his energy. You know, these are all the indications that where you make your decisions on when to bring him on and how long to play him for and when to rest him.
The minutes being handed to young footballers is growing with every season, but there are preventative measures in place to ensure they aren't at higher risk of injuries later in their careers. Let us know if you think more could be done using the hashtag #FootballNowYoungTalents. That's all we've got time for here from the Aspetar Hospital in Doha. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.